I was born in Plymouth in England because my father was in the Royal Artillery during the war and was stationed at Dover Castle. And my mother had 3 children during the war. I was the last of the 3. When I was 7 years old, when I was 6 years old, she ran off with the padre of the army to South Africa, and it was a big scandal, of course. And my father was asked to retire from the army or to take a post in India, somewhere far away, and he decided to retire early and take us back to Jersey, which is where he grew up. Jersey is a Channel island. It's 15 miles from the coast of France, and it's an old volcano. Very beautiful island, but of course very small. I grew up on this tight little island, and everyone knew about my naughty mother, so this was quite something. And my father took her back, and she had another child, 8.5 years younger than me. And then when my sister was 7, she ran off again with the next man. So this was pretty hard. And I decided the one thing I never wanted to do in my life was to be like my mother. So I began to spend a lot of time reading and making art, and decided that this was going to be my life. And I went to an all-girls school, only, women teachers until I was in the 6th form. And I didn't want to be like them either. So luckily, I had a very good art teacher. She really encouraged me to make art. She left the school, and her substitute teacher was a man. Immediately, I was offered a place at Bath Academy of Art in Corsham, Wiltshire. Bath Academy of Art was then offering a 4-year course, which was a degree equivalent course. It was the first one in England. So my father agreed that I could do this course. He wanted to be sure that I would be able to support myself when he died, or whatever. And he did, in fact, die while I was at art college. So, and my mother married again and went to South Africa within 3 months. She already had 2 more boyfriends lined up. And so I was left alone in England to fend for myself. And I had a boyfriend, but I didn't intend to marry him. So when I was offered the chance to go work for Hans-Jörg Meyer in Stuttgart, when I graduated, I jumped at it. And he was a publisher of artist books. He was publishing books by Dieter Roth, Emmett Williams, Robert Filliou, Andre Tompkins, and a whole bunch of concrete poets. Right now we're in the Kunstbibliothek in Potsdamer Straße, Berlin, in the Kulturforum. And they are now having an exhibition of all of Hans-Jörg Meyer's publications over the years. Hans-Jörg asked poets, visual artists to give him texts, which he then set in his workshop in Steibmeier, the Druckerei in Stuttgart. And when he came to Bath Academy of Art, which I think was in 1966, the first year he was there, he asked students to take texts by visual poets and to set them and to make prints from them. So it was a kind of a playful way to teach us typography and to use the machines and the printing presses. And also for us to see a great variety of material which was being produced by people at the time. Yes, so Bob Cobbing is another British artist whom I was very fond of when I was a student. I met Siegfried Kramer when I went to Stuttgart. Paul de Vray had made a very interesting small book with only blank white pages. Reinhard Dörl I also met when I was in Stuttgart. In Hamilton Finley I had corresponded with. John Furnival was actually my teacher for 2 years at Bath Academy of Art, and he introduced me to concrete poetry. And to Ian Hamilton Finley, whom I'd never actually met but only corresponded with. John Furnival was a delightful character, and another concrete poet we met through him was the monk. I hope he's here. No, he's not. I can't think of his name right now, but another eccentric, wonderful person. So all of these really are people that I met Richard Hamilton's very important in my life because he was also Emmett Williams' best friend and Dieter Roth's best friend. So all of these people. John Sylvester Huidard, that's the monk. This is kind of, the background to everything that I was doing when I was at Bath Academy of Art. One of the most important artists with whom Hans-Jörg Meyer worked was Dieter Roth. And Dieter Roth had been publishing books since the 50s. His first book was published in Iceland. He had an Icelandic wife and lived much of the year there, had 3 children with her. Then he started experimenting, doing all kinds of things. Hans-Jörg wanted to publish everything he'd ever done, and he started publishing volume after volume. This is a set of 40 books that comes in a bookcase. It's quite amazing, and it's like everything that he ever thought of doing and more. So the first book, I think one of the first books, this says number 16, but Mundunculum, I know, was one of the first books he ever made in Iceland in a very small edition. And just about these things too, these cutout books, he was doing in Iceland in the 50s. So it's kind of bringing together a resume of all of the work that he ever did. There are also books of poems. There is Scheisse, Noch mehr Scheisse, Noch mehr verdammte Scheisse, and there are a lot, and all kinds of other things. He published books also. He published one book back to back with Emmett Williams, who was also an author of Hans-Jörg's. Emmett Williams did his most famous book, Sweethearts, with Hans-Jörg Meyer. And then with Dieter Roth, he did footnotes to Sweethearts. The book was Thorn and Eth, which was the first book I ever saw by Emmett Williams, which was interesting. Yeah, so this is the second half of the alphabet of artists with whom Hans-Jörg Meyer worked over the years, and a lot of them are very familiar to me. The most familiar to me is Emmett Williams, whom I actually married and spent 37 years with, yes, or more, 40 years, because we weren't married at the beginning. And then all of these other people we met during, Edwin Morgan was also a concrete poet from England, Hermann Nitsch, everyone knows about Hermann Nitsch. Dieter Roth, of course. Gerhard Rühm is very, very important in Germany. Aram Saroyan is actually the son of William Saroyan. And I met him in Hollywood because his father-in-law was Walter Matthau. And we actually had dinner in their house in Palisade, what's it called? Something, anyway, part of Los Angeles. This was an author who was also published by the Rainer Verlag. Now, the Rainer Verlag was a publishing house with whom I made 6 books. So it was also wonderful that they knew each other so early. Mary Ellen Salt was a concrete poet from America who also brought out an anthology of concrete poetry. And I actually worked with her, setting some of her poems when I went to America. That was 1969, I was working with her. Jan Vos is my friend who has a bookshop now in Amsterdam. I think that's all I have to say about that alphabet. And I had been doing some concrete poetry with John Furnival in Hamilton Finley while I was at art school, and was very interested in artist books anyway. I love printing. I learned all the printing processes, and it was a great joy to go work for Hans-Jörg for the summer. He was having a retrospective of all of the books and publications he had made at Den Haag in Holland that fall in October, and took me with him also to the Frankfurt Book Fair. where he was sharing a stand with Dick Higgins of the Something Else Press in New York. They were co-publishing books. Hans-Jörg would do the European edition and Dick would do the American edition. And Dick was looking for a new assistant when I was getting a scholarship to travel. So I used my scholarship money to go to New York and become his assistant. And on my second day in New York, I went to the Something Else Press, walked in the door, and found on the second floor of this building behind the Chelsea Hotel a desk. There was Dick Higgins on one side, Emmett Williams, who was the editor-in-chief, sitting at the other side of the desk, and the book on the desk was their new publication, Notations by John Cage. I thought, wow, look what I've come to. And I was pretty happy at the beginning. Then I found out that Dick had actually hired me for my British accent. He wanted me to answer the telephone and not to work on the books, which is what I'd come for. So I quickly grew dissatisfied with the job, but stuck it out because in the meantime I had or was falling in love with Emmett Williams. So at the end of that year, Emmett Williams got a job as artist in residence at the University of Kentucky. So I told Dick Higgins that I was going back to England, which I wasn't. I went to Kentucky. So, and the next year I was married to Emmett Williams and remained in the United States and got a green card and taught printmaking. We went to California in 1970, as did Dick Higgins and Alison Knowles and Namjoon Pike and many other people, to go to the Los Angeles Walt Disney School. The Walt Disney had founded an art school there called the California Institute of the Arts. And he invited all of these big shot artists to go there. The head of the art department was Alan Caprow. And Emmett was teaching in the critical studies department because he was a poet essentially and was involved with literature. And he did a course called The Right of Arting, which was about the writings that artists did. And he chose writings by Kandinsky and Klee and Yoko Ono and Klaus Oldenburg and Man Ray. And so all of the writings by artists. Newspapers that George Maciunas made in the early 60s. He was the designer, and they are extremely rare now. As you see, they're just newsprint, and you have to be very careful because they're almost falling apart. It's a Fluxus newspaper. So these were publications that George Maciunas made in the early 60s when he was putting the movement together and choosing the artists who would be represented by Fluxus. And so he published them with his own money and he sent them out around the world to advertise Fluxus. And oh, there's Bob Watts, Row. And this is Dick Higgins, yeah.
But how many exemplars?
I don't know. I mean, they're rare. They're very rare, and there are very few left, you know. So I know that people are always phoning me to ask if I have this because they want to buy them, you know. But so I don't know how rare they are, but they are rare. This illustrated Fluxus. That was 1993. That was. This is a newspaper by Dieter Roth, which I actually worked on. I was working for Hans-Jörg Meyer, and I actually worked in the darkroom on this particular newspaper, and we printed it afterwards. And so I, at first, was just there, but they soon found out that I knew how to run an offset press. They had bought a big printing press for the school, and I got the job to run the printing press. And once they found out that I knew how to do that, they were setting up the new Cal Arts building in Valencia in California with a big graphic arts workshop. And they hired me to run the graphic arts workshop. So I was making films and running the offset press and doing silkscreen and so on. So this was my, start of my teaching in America. And all of this time I was meeting artists because they were coming to the Something Else press first. There were a lot of Fluxus artists. At CalArts, there were all of these art stars, and they were all talking about themselves and how wonderful they were and going, me, 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 and I'm this and I am that. And Americans, anyway, always tell you everything that they've done the moment they meet you. And so anyway, I had, there was going to be some kind of an exhibition coming up, and I got the idea to make kind of a coconut shy, we call that in fairs in England, where you throw coconuts at people. And I thought of making these eyes that you could throw the coconuts at, But anyway, started collecting all of these lowercase I's because, it's I, me, ego, ego, ego. And yes, so I was had done a lot of typography. I was fascinated by the fact that the lowercase I is only a line and a head, right? Like a person, but they're all different. So I just got obsessed by this, and I think I started the collection maybe 71 or 72, and in 73 we went to Nova Scotia to teach at the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, and I was still collecting eyes. I made the first prints there using the lowercase I when I was teaching silkscreen, and I made silkscreen prints. They're George Maciunas' manifestos. So he made lots of charts about art history. This is one of his charts where he's like trying to put down all the influences in the 20th century and the 19th century, that came to become Fluxus. And this is one of the more famous of his. This is signed Joseph Beuys. It was sent there. But a manifesto. So what is Fluxus? And this is what Fluxus is, So according to George Maciunas, anyway. Robert Gardner knew all about this and invited us to then go to Harvard University. And Emmett was going to teach the Rite of Arting again, the same course about the writings of artists. And because I was a printmaker and they had a print workshop at the Carpenter Center of the Visual Arts, they invited me to, first of all, make posters. So I was making posters for visiting artists. And when they saw I knew what I was doing, they asked me to set up a silkscreen studio there. And I did. And then I became tutor of the arts at Leverett House, which is one of the Harvard colleges, and I kind of gave evening courses there and was teaching at the Carpenter Center at the same time and making posters.
What brought you and Emmett to Berlin?
Emmett had a national endowment for the arts and won it as a conceptual artist. He didn't know how to apply, so he decided, since no one could categorize what it was that he did, he would call himself a conceptual artist. And he got the award. And we spent the money making prints. I made the prints. And at the same time, he applied to Berlin for a DAD grant for a year, and he got it. So he came in January to Berlin in 1980, and I waited until the end of the academic year, which was June, and I came in June with my son, Gary. In the meantime, Emmett and I were very happy to be making books with the Rainer Verlag. The Rainer Verlag was run by Rainer Pretzel, and he was also a great printer. He made beautiful books. This book that I made with him, The You, in 1982, was the result of Rainer discovering that I was making all of these drawings and had this collection. And he did many of his books in metal type. He had a beautiful collection of metal typefaces in his printing place in Kreuzberg. And he had a Heidelberg press, and I knew how to work in the darkroom. So I not only worked on my books, I worked on Emmett's books too, and did the film work and made the plates, the printing plates, and it was a fantastic collaboration. And after the first book, You, this one, we did 4 more books after that, and Emmett also did 4 or 5 books with Rainer. And then came the vendor, the wall came down. Suddenly his printing press just the price of the space went up 10 times. So from 300 a month to 3,000 a month, which he couldn't pay. At the moment, I only have the photograph of it, but it's very nice because it's. Emmett actually found these plastic alphabet letters and put them into the concrete, so to make the concrete poem. And the U is for synthetic urine. So. And that was another very important Polish artist. His name was Jarosław Kozłowski, and he was teaching at the art school in Poznan, or Posen as it's known in Germany. And he and Emmett had met at the Hochschule der Künste in Hamburg. They were both teaching there in 1981. And Jarosław invited us to Poland the first time in 81, when the Russian tanks were on the border and all of the Polish people were expecting the Russian army to move in any day. I think Emmett was on the border between East Germany and Poland for 8 hours in a train trying to get in, but he did. Gary and I came a couple of days later, and that was the first exhibition in the Galleria Accumulatori, which Jarosław ran. And the exhibitions were only 4 days long, but since the 70s, he had invited international artists to come there and make exhibitions and organized everything. And for many Polish artists, this was the first Western art they had ever seen or had been exposed to. And Jarosław was an incredibly courageous person. He was the rector of this art academy for 7 years during the dictatorship in Poland. And when the police came and wanted to see the papers for the students to find out their political affiliations, he went out and burnt them all. So he put himself in personal danger to protect his students. So when, through Jarosław, we met Cezary Staniszewski, who had a gallery in Warsaw, the Galeria RR. We had exhibitions there too. And through Cezary, we made an international art seminar in Warsaw, both in 87 and 88, inviting 50 international artists to go to Warsaw to meet with 50 artists from Poland and to make what they called an art seminar. It was called Etc. And it was visual works, artist books, and performance. And so Emmett invited just about every international artist he knew to come to that. So Ori Chopin came, Bernhard Heidsieck, Gerhard Rühm, Daniel Spurri. The list is endless. Many artists from New York came, and it was incredibly important for the Polish artists who were meeting these people for the first time and learning about their work for the first time. The delivery of elephant shit from the zoo delivered there. So there he is going through his shit collection. That's a photograph that Larry made. This is Larry Miller again. So here we are doing shit work. Then came construction in process. This was a series of exhibitions conceived and organized by Richard Waszko, who came from Łódź, or Lodz, as people in Poland know it, in Poland. He was a member of the Solidarity movement and was banned from Poland in 1980 and went to Munich and did the second construction in process in Munich. Then he got a DAD grant in 1985 and came to Berlin, which is where we met him, and became very good friends. And as soon as he was able to, he went back to Poland in 1990 and founded the Artists' Museum, again in Lodz, or in Łódź, as they call it, which was an artist for artists, run by artists. And he made Emmett Williams the honorary president of that museum.
What's your problem? My mother thanks you.
Moja mama dziękuję Państwu.
And vice versa.
I wice versa.
And meanwhile, so I think all of my work was about loving printing and printmaking and books and art books and reflecting everything around me, whether it was collecting bits of trash off the streets, using photographs I'd taken, recycling materials that I found. My project in Mitzvah Ramon in the middle of the desert in Israel was to collect all the trash flying about in the wind and to paste it all onto a huge billboard I found there so that the people could see their lives reflected, all the things they cook with every day, or who had just been elected mayor, or what kind of goods were imported. It was all there on this billboard for them to see. And the actual event was called Coexistence that we were doing there. So, and they were coexisting in Mitzvah Ramon with Russian immigrants, Jewish Russian immigrants, and black ones from Ethiopia. So it was a really strange community, you know, and a strange mixture. So you'd get these Ethiopians walking around in their amazing colored garb, and the Russian immigrants sitting in their backyards drinking vodka, which was perfect for all the artists who came because, you know, I mean, you get 50 artists together in any situation, they're all going to drink the town dry in about 3 nights. So, which is exactly what they did, you know. And we were very happy for the vodka, so. Pope. Anyway, Flux Pope George Machunas died last year. Here he is dressed as the Pope because he had done the Flux Mass. So it's an article that was just dedicated to him after his death. Here he is. He was a cross-dresser. He liked to dress up as women. He had a whole collection of women's clothes. Flux Cabaret. Yeah, look at that. And I came to New York at the end of '68. It was Thanksgiving Day when I arrived. And all of a sudden, you know, during that year at the Something Else Press, people were walking in through the door every day. Like, I was working there alone over Christmas. Everyone had gone away, and I was minding the shop. And who should walk in? Andy Warhol. I mean, this was amazing. So here I am showing Andy Warhol the books, and he's buying them. And of course, you have to record that, you know, or you know. There was the party for John Cage, you know, for the publication of notations. And at the Gotham Book Mart, you had to record that too. And yes, that became my thing. I'm recording the people I'm meeting, you know. I began writing my first diary every single day in 1968. And the reason I began doing so was because I had seen a diary by Dieter Roth, who had visited Bath Academy of Art, where I was a student. And he was making day-by-day diaries with little sketches in them and writing what he was working on. And they were beautiful and colorful and were a history. He always had it in his pocket. And I thought, well, here I am. It's my last year at art school, and I'm leaving, and I'm going to go to Germany, and I'll be working for Dieter Roth's publisher, who was also my teacher at art school. And I should start writing down what I'm doing because I'm meeting interesting people and working on books with artists, and I should keep a record. So I did. And it became a habit. It became my habit every day to get up in the morning and make a cup of coffee and come to my work table and take out my diary and write about whatever I was doing the day before, whatever I had accomplished or was working on or who I was with, and in a ways that would help me to plan for the coming day, what I would like to be doing or how my ideas would progress from the day before. Because, you know, and when you're working on a project, every time you wake up in the morning, you have a new idea, or hopefully you have a new idea. Dieter Roth used to say, a good artist has at least 10 ideas every day. So, yeah, and I liked these kinds of page a day diaries. And I like good paper. Unfortunately, you can't always find it. In America, they had very nice ones. English ones were even better. Here in Germany, these are my diaries from the last 6 years in there. I love paper blanks because the paper is beautiful. And this one that I couldn't find one this year, I found a paper blank, but it's only half the size of this one, and it has a whole week and then one whole page. So I kind of ignore that. It's not good enough. So I found this one, replaced it. And these diaries, of course, after 40 years, take up a lot of space. I have 2 suitcases full of them, and this box here. So I had the idea maybe 1965 to reduce the space by just taking out everything between the lines, or actually between the names. So then I just took the names from each page chronologically, as it were. So going through, okay, whose name is here? And writing down the names one after another. And then the places we were meeting. Often it was at a restaurant, because that's where artists get together and talk. Or maybe it was a kneipe, a drinking place, a pub. Or maybe it was the workplace. And so I would write it down, and then I would just indicate what month it was and what year it was. And I made kind of this background page in black and white, my handwriting, which is almost like printing. And then I decided that I should color code these pages with what I was doing at the time. So if I was working, it would be green, or if I was getting money from someone, that would be green. And then everyday living was just plain blue. But if it got exciting and we were going out to dinner, it would become purple or pink. And then if we were at an opening or performance or some special art event, it would be red or orange. And then the time things were always yellow. So I had you'd look at a page and it would be color coded, and you could look right away to see what you were doing. And so after I'd made the first one of these, I think it was 54 pages, the first one, I made a kind of a big wall piece with all of these pages lined up in chronological order again, and color coded. And I had it on the wall of my bedroom right in front of my then work table where I wrote every morning. So I could see at a glance, okay, 1984, what was I doing in September? And it would be right there. And so it was like a wall tapestry of my life, as it were. And so I made the first one. About 10 years later, I made the next one. But I kept writing, and I'm still writing now. And the beginning of this year, I almost decided to give up this habit. But after 2 weeks, I just couldn't bear it. I had to start again. I just, because even though my life is not very interesting now, there's always something to write about, and I'm still working. So, the work is developing, and I'm getting more ideas, I hope.
How did they perceive the Fluxus movement there?
I came in it through the artist books. It was through Emmett was a poet. So, he'd already published the Anthology of Concrete Poetry, which in 1966, he had published his book Sweethearts, which was a classic. Then he had published Footnotes to Sweethearts, and he was working on a wonderful book called The Boy and the Bird when I met him, which is a fantastic building poem. So I came at it that way. But of course, a lot of the New York artists I were meeting were Fluxus artists. And living in Dick Hickens' house, there was Phil Corner. I met Al Hansen, who was actually Happenings, but when Fluxus became the word, he became a Fluxus artist rather than a Happenings artist. That happens too, people get. And of course, there was John Cage, who wasn't Fluxus, but everyone called the father of Fluxus, you know. And yes, so I was meeting all of these people. Of course, their ideas. Well, all of these are letters from artist friends or invitations or whatever. But these are, you know, I have lots more files of letters in that. But these are, say, look, this is Dick Higgins. I mean, he was always writing. So there are actually 5 files of his. And I have more of his letters in other places. But, so they've all, these are his Dieter wrote, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 of Dieter wrote. Takako Saito, yeah, so Daniel Sperry, there are 3. Yeah, and then these are like deluxe editions of books. And then behind all of these files, are Dieter wrote books. And so, I mean...
And what is it?
Well, you know, just in cardboard folders. And so I put them into plastic folders and sorted them out when there were lots of letters from the same person. But because these are hard.
These letters?
These are all letters.
Oh my God.
And I've been through all of them, listing them, mind you. You know. I have a total list of every letter. It's unbelievable, right? You know, yeah. And, you know, I mean, a lot of it's really interesting stuff, too.
And handmade.
Yeah.
How did you collaborate with Emmett?
But we were also working together on his books because I knew how to do layouts and things like that. So I was definitely, you know, helping him. He was helping me by supporting me in the sense that, you know, that he was allowing me to work by myself. He never, ever tried to influence me in what I was working on, which was great. And he always gave me the time, but, you know, so it was a good way. It was a good life together. I liked very much that I could just go away and do my thing. And when I'd done it, I would say, hey, look what I've done, you know. So he would never influence me. But of course he did, because we talked every day.
Art of my dart,
arrow of my marrow,
butter of my butter,
bode of my abode,
cope of my scope,
curry of my scurry,
den of my Eden,
dew of my ado,
ember of my member,
eel of my feel,
fort of my effort,
flexibility of my inflexibility,
go of my ego,
gain of my gain,
hence of my whence,
him of my whim,
inky of my dinky,
inter of my hinter,
jog of my jog,
Johnny-O of my oh Johnny-O,
kipper of my skipper,
kin of my skin,
liquor of my flicker,
lapstick of my slapstick,
mission of my emission,
motion of my emotion,
nip of my snip.
So I think our first performance together was 1984 at the Akademie der Künste Berlin. And Emmett has a large print which is called Alphabet Square, which is a spiral. It starts with A in the middle and it spirals out until there's an A in each corner and there's a whole alphabet on each side. And there are 26 alphabets in this spiral. And we performed 26 alphabets at the Akademie der Künste. It took us 1.5 hours.
Can you describe a characteristic of your Fluxus friend in 1 or 2 short sentences and tell us their names?
Dick Higgins could never be interrupted. When he was asked to talk, he'd talk for 4 hours. Al Hansen was a great talker too. I mean, he loved to tell you all of this stuff, and most of it wasn't true, you know, about how he influenced Yoko Ono or something like that. He loved to drop names. Some of them were really interesting talkers. Daniel Sperry is pretty interesting, but he's not really Fluxus in my opinion, because he never associated himself with Fluxus in the beginning because he thought it was a bad thing to be associated with Fluxus. Now he'll tell you he was always there. Talkers. Robert Filho. I love Robert Filho because he didn't really know how to make work. You know, he wasn't an artist. People had to help him make work. I helped him make work. I met him before I met Emmett. But he could talk for 24 hours non-stop, and it was always interesting, fascinating. So, yeah. And when I first met Emmett Williams, he also talked all night. And I thought, this is really interesting. If I can stay up all night and talk with someone, it wouldn't be bad spending more time with him. So, yeah.
All artists go through several stages of artistic creativity. Can you describe some periods in your artistic development?
So, I mean, of course, the last 11 years since Emmett died were extremely hard for me in the beginning. First of all, I mean, I think this must be the case for many artists' wives, but there are so many people who forget all about you immediately. You don't hear from them because, you know, you are completely left on your own. And so that was quite kind of a shock, you know, that people who were my best friends or our best friends suddenly weren't there anymore. And I found that really tough in the beginning. And then, you know, I thought, okay, I have to get through this, and I did. But it was quite lonely, I have to say, because, you know, you didn't have that person to talk to. I'd always talked to Emmett. So I had to find another way to go. And I think that way was to just sink myself into work, because that made me the happiest. And yeah, so I think this kind of, you know, the kind of really getting up in the morning and being able to lose yourself in something for the day was incredibly important. So it's a kind of a therapy, I suppose, yes? A meditation and a therapy. And I got through it fine, and I'm quite happy to be alone. This is a bottle of Grappa Williams, and the bottle was made by the same glassmaker. And then there's a little man. I'm going to have to clean this up a bit. But I think that should go. The Grappa Williams was made by, in Bassaro, it says Williams on the cork. You see, Llia. So I used it as a portrait of Emmett. And then no bull, and then the A and the E leaning on each other like a diphthong. So, so it's Anne and Emmett inside a box. No bull. It wasn't always easy, but I think you forget those times. I mean, you forget that, you know, that sometimes you don't have enough money for materials, and sometimes you don't have enough money for clothes, but you get through it. And yeah, I've always wished that I'd had more money for materials, but if I'd had more money for materials, maybe I wouldn't have done some of the work I've done, because I had to invent things to work with. So like trash from the street, like wine bottle corks, like things that were around the house, right? You use what was there. So, yeah.
What is the main message in your art?
I made a banner once, which is kind of my maxim. Art is what you do to surprise yourself. And I think that that's what I like. It's a voyage of discovery, that you should never quite know where you're going. You know, that you're always trying a new way or something to make a voyage of discovery. You know, you don't know what you're going to be doing next year because you haven't done it yet. And I think it's, you know, this kind of, it's a way of living for me. You know, it's a way to get up every morning to surprise myself. What am I going to do today?
What is more important aim in your life?
Enjoy yourself as long as you can.
Can you say something about your work's positive, negative? For me, it shows direct connections with concrete poetry.
Well, you know, because I was married to a concrete poet, I didn't really want to get in. But anyway, it's just that I'm interested in typography, and I just discovered, you know, working with these eyes, I was discovering new typefaces, and I got a book on American wood type, and was fascinated by the fact that some of these letters were more beautiful in negative than they were in positive, and thought about how to use that in connection with a work. So I started off with the dictionary definition. Actually, this was the first one, which is in a type sample book that I had. It was the paragraph that they set in all different typefaces, so that you could select the type, the book type that you wanted for whatever it is, your publication. And so I took that text and I put it in that typeface. And then I thought, well, this is really nice, you know, positive and negative, because I'm using the negative spaces. And then I took the dictionary definition of positive and the dictionary definition of negative and put them together and explored them with the typeface. This is another piece I made for IO. It's called Rainbow High for IO, where I found some inks that were manufactured by Rote Ring, which is this company that makes technical pens, and they had rainbow inks. And I thought, ooh, this is right up my alley. So I got these pens, and all of these squares are actually drawn by pen through each square with different colored inks by one. And I had layers of colors over each other to again create the rainbow and the gradations. Portrait with anti-aging makeup. I spent a lot of time researching all of the television ads and getting all of the, expressions down, exactly how they present these things in television. And then I bought the products. I think the products cost about 350 euros at the time, Okay. Hier ist das ist ein Problemplatz hier. Das kriegt man furchtbar. Man kann immer dann ein Alter da so ausmachen, wenn man so da anguckt und sieht, dass alles flabbig ist. It was very nice because I really learned a lot about the makeup, and then I didn't know again whether after I put it all onto my painting, whether it was going to turn blue or black in the night. I had no idea. But actually it looks very nice even now. So, it actually did improve my painting. Aber das sollte auch wirklich so diese Farbe. Ja, das ist so schön.
Ein bisschen stärker.
Und hoffentlich bleibt das noch ein 10 Jahre und nicht nur 24 Stunden.
You began writing your diaries in 1962. When did you begin making print editions in the computer?
Because we got the first computer given us, we were given a computer in 1990. An Italian entrepreneur gave us a computer for Gary so that he could use it for school. And of course, Gary was at school all day. So when he was at school all day, I kind of started using the computer, And I got a laser printer. And it was one of these first Macs, a little square thing like that, right? Yeah, and so at some point, when there was some money in the bank account, I got a Power Mac with Photoshop. And, started experimenting, seeing what I could do. And then I was helping Emmett. We were doing the book, Mr. Fluxus. The Mr. Fluxus book, which I also worked on with Emmett. And we made this lovely cover for it like this. Because as Hans-Jörg knows, what you have on the spine of the book is very important, so everyone can see it in your bookshelf. So we thought that would be catching everyone's eye. But it's also, this is also a fantastic book. I mean, you can laugh out loud every page in this book. It's fantastic. Originally, it was for my own use, so that I would have everything dated and, in order, so as an archive for myself. And then I showed it to my gallery person, Marlene Frey in Zurich, and she was the one who said, let's make an edition. And so that was a collaboration with Gallery Marlene Frey in Zurich. And we didn't make a large edition. She tends to make small editions for her gallery. It's called Galerie und Edition Marlene Frey. She makes artist books, and she helps with the expenses. So we got the best paper, we got the archival paper, and she helped me with that because I couldn't afford all of the inks are expensive too, And yeah, so it was a collaboration.
There are many people who write diaries and collect photographs. But I'm interested in knowing why you decided to shift from writing a private diary to creating a public editions.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably it was the realization that it could have been the end of Emmett's life, that it was coming to an end, and that I wanted to make the record, Yeah, because he died actually in the beginning of 2007, and I finished this in 2006. The last book is 2006. So it was that kind of idea of making sense of, you know, that time that we were together. I did go on performing with Ben Patterson, which was very nice. He was a lovely man and a very good friend of Emmett's. And we did the performance at the opening of the Museum Fluxus Plus together. And, you know, I went to Poland several times. There was a Fluxus festival in Poznan organized by Jarosław Kozłowski in 2011. Oh God, Petra Stegman did that too. She organized that too. So then I would, you know, I had Eric Anderson and Ben Patterson who were always, you know, were there for me too. So they remained good friends. And if they came to Berlin, we would go out to dinner, and, you know, Ben would stay at my place. And so, you know, so that was good. There were a few people like that. Not so many, but. But seas, nations dazzled by the light, which for a brief moment he holds in his hands. He sees the sword that will pierce the heart of Mary, and he prophesies it. But then it seems a curtain is drawn. A shadow covers the child about whom Luke reports nothing further, except the episode of the flight into Egypt and the finding of Jesus in the temple where he astounded the doctors of the law. The latter point, certainly, is enough to make us understand what kind of Jewish child he was. Such children still exist. It is known by what I have recently read in... hardly escaped the furnaces, where his family and brother... He'd come and stay at my place, and we'd be drinking whiskey until 2:30 in the morning or something, you know, talking. So, yeah.
And now the whole archive will go to the Getty. How do you feel about that? Because you're working on it for such a long time.
I feel very happy about it because I don't want to have it in my place because I'm afraid to have it all there. You know, in case there was a flood, a fire, who knows, you know. And I mean, first of all, I wanted the archive to stay in Germany. I thought it belonged here. And I approached the Berlinische Galerie, but then they said they were only interested in things that he had done since he came to Berlin, which was 1980. And then they said they already had most of the books. Then the same thing with Worpswede, not Worpswede, in Bremen, this...
The big archive in Bremen.
Yes, right. I was in contact with the woman archivist there, and she came to visit me. And she said they would have to raise money. She was interested, but they would have to raise money. And then I didn't hear from her again. I went in the last stack.
Okay.
This I looked through at the weekend, but I can bring it out.
Okay, I will take it. I will take it.
I'm going to pass it to you, okay?
Okay.
It's when young men or young women are trying to invite someone to come to their room. They say, "Would you like to come up and see my etchings?" You know. Okay, so
I will take it.
this, believe it or not, oh, an IO work. See, look at that. IO. This is important. Okay, IO. Okay, and this is mine. All right. That's IO's portrait of George Maciunas that we used on the cover of the book Mr. Fluxus. Oh, this is very interesting. I'll show you because Emmett made what he called Lichtskuluren, and they looked a little bit. This is actually the cut stencils. He made cut stencils like this to make these images, and then he sprayed colors through them. And these are the ones that he was making just before he died, the week before he died. And I just saved all of the Shamblonen because they were so interesting. It's art is what makes life more interesting than art. So, which is a good one. Yeah, and yeah, so this is also a small measuring piece by Robert Filiu. He did a lot of measuring pieces, so this is a little
Great.
edition. It's called the Standard Book, Filiu Standard Book. So, Livre et Talon, so it's this is a Christmas present from Richard Hamilton. It says Happy New Year, Richard and Rita. And, you know, he's a perfectionist, and of course he found a paintbrush that's called Perfection. So, which is really nice. What they are buttons that Eric Anderson, who sent the stuff yesterday, he gives them these out in a performance that he does where he tries to get the audience to leave. He tells them all to leave, and they don't leave because they've paid money to come in and they don't want to go. So then he tries to bribe them to go. And one of the things is to give people a badge when they leave, that I was the first one to leave the performance by Eric Anderson. And then after that, he starts giving people presents. If you leave now, I will give you a bottle of wine, you know. If you leave now, I will give you, you know. And people still sit there. I mean, you know, I've always been the first to leave, but... And then at the very end, he starts showing a porno film, and that usually gets most people to leave, you know. That's that. It's a pretty good performance. This is the George Maciunas deck of cards made by Larry Miller. So, as a, you know, he liked to dress up, I think I told you that.
Yeah.
So, so there are... So this is a deck of cards with the fingers on the back. And here's him also in dress up. So, yes, here we are. The Drop Dead Emmett Williams cantata. Emmett used a lot of alphabet spaghetti in his work. The better if you can't play chess. So
Filiu. Yeah.
this is Filiu.
Okay.
And so this is you won't imitate Marcel Duchamp, you know. So and so this is T, and the optimistic boxes for me and Emmett. Yeah. So these are stamps made in Japan for Emmett's translation of When This You See, Remember Me, and it's a beautiful piece. The originals are sold, but I have the original stamps, and then underneath I have the ones for the English version, When This You See, Remember Me. And I'll show you, it's a beautiful, beautiful piece. Well, they're private performances. You drop them and they make different noises. And she actually has a chess set, which you know, the chess pieces are all the same. They have different sounds, and you play them with the sounds. So, and there are wooden ones, but I just happen to, there's also another lovely box I have in the other room. And this is another play with language where it begins in the beginning of the book with just boy, girl, girl, cat, cat, mouse, rooster. And then every page it grows slightly, and there are illustrations too. But by the middle of the book, you're getting a little nun and a big penguin, a roly-poly penguin and a little cow, a big cow and a roly-poly cowboy, and a little dwarf. And we go a bit further and it goes, who is the little friend burning the odour of spring at the top of the stairs? And where is the big foe laughing at a dead fish behind the old barn? When is the roly-poly foe crying for his guardian angel when no one is looking? And how is the little sweetheart dreaming of guess who in an empty room? What is the big sweetheart forgetting mud pies with black roses? And why is the roly-poly... Well, anyway, and then by the end of the book, it's going down again. It's getting shorter and shorter and shorter again, each of the things, and it ends up with just the verbs. So that the last, making love and forgetting, dreaming and crying, laughing and burning and making love. So, and then the very, very end, you just end crying, laughing, burning, making love, forgetting, dreaming, crying. That was the very last book we published together. But we also have books by all of the friends. So Dieter Roth's in the other room, but we have Richard Hamilton's books. We have Klaus Oldenburg, we have Robert Filiu, we have 3 shelves of Fluxus. So it's like, you know, our friends. And I'll have to say goodbye to all of our friends soon.
I am your camp mama, though I didn't give you birth, because your camp mama is your biggest fan on earth. So praise your camp mama while she's here to hold your hand. Embrace your camp mama and go fuck the fatherland. That'll bring you heartbreak, tears, and trauma. That is why the Lord gave you a mama. Come to your camp, mama, and take refuge in her arms. It's true, your camp, mama'll never tire of your charms. You've got your camp, mama, thank your lucky stars above. If not your camp, mama, who'll replace your mother's love. When your days are dark with too much drama, you can always cozy up to mama. There's dialogue and dancing after a while. That's great. And after a while, the cycle's through, and then she sings the following. Life is full of joy, though it's hard to see. Listen, darling boy, you can count on me. Someday your camp mama will no longer be around. They'll lay your camp mama deep within the frosty ground. You'll miss your camp mama. Was she a virgin or a whore? And this old camp mama you'll be seeing